Hello, my friend. I am CharLee Simons, your host here on Do Not Talk. Talk about things you're not supposed to talk about, politics and religion. Talking to the people I'm not supposed to talk to. Because the media doesn't like them, or the left doesn't like them, or even on the right, they don't like them. Well, I put them on. A lot of J6ers, Proud Boys, Oath Keepers. Yeah, I've had them all on. Even though people in my own party were going, oh, CharLee, no, the Central Committee cannot back anything you do, cannot support you, cannot promote you. If you have these people on. These people? What, you mean actual patriots who showed up Capitol building when you didn't? Those people, the ones who have been railroaded and are now being exonerated, are now being pardoned. That just happened. But a whole bunch of other J6ers, as everybody calls them now, the Oath Keepers and Promise Keepers. Promise Keepers is totally different, isn't it? Anyway, you know what I'm saying. I'm not thinking all that well. I came back from the California GOP convention all sick. So I'm all hopped up on cough medicine. And the only thing that's sober in this house right now is Spike. There's Spike. Spike sighting. Everybody's Spike sighting. I actually took him to the California GOP convention in San Diego. Yeah. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Republicans, supposedly, and a whole lot of rhinos. I think that's what made me sick. I've got some kind of adverse reaction to rhinos because there were plenty of them there. And Spike was great. He was the hit of the convention, for heaven's sake. People were wanting to take pictures of him. Everybody's stopping and petting him. And I had no idea he was going to be such a hit. It was fun. But I was there for the big vote on Sunday when we did not endorse a candidate for governor of California. And it's not because we didn't want to. Oh, we wanted to. It's boiled down to two now for the Republican Party, at least, the official California Republican Party. It's boiled down to two. All the grassroots candidates, Louis Herms was not there. Danny Mercury was not even there because they're, I think, no party preference. I think that's how they are. So they're not affiliated with the Republican Party per se. They're staunch conservatives, but they don't have that Republican name in front of their candidacy. And they were not there. So it's down to Sheriff Chad Bianco and Steve Hilton, former Fox News Sunday night guy, the Next Generation, New Generation, whatever he called that show. And we wanted to, we tried to, but the vote, as I showed in that video yesterday, I actually snuck a little recording when they tallied the final vote. And it was so close that neither one got 60%. That's all it was. And I said right then and there, guess how the media is going to spin this? Even the California Republican Party isn't backing their own candidates. Even the California Republican Party is going against President Trump, who came out and endorsed Steve Hilton. They're going against Trump. Get all giddy, like their bodies are all electric. That's how they are in the newsroom. I have a great guest today. I've never had him on before, but I'm guessing in advance I'm going to really enjoy this. His name is Mark Abrahams. That's it. Like he says Abraham Lincoln with an S on the end. Mark Abrahams. He was with WABC in New York, which was the flagship for the ABC network, radio and television. And I also got to work for ABC in San Francisco, which is the fourth largest market in the nation. But he was number one, man. That's the top market right there. If you make it to New York, you are the best of the best because all the other little goofballs have been weeded out by that point. And this show is going to be talking a lot about media, mainly because that's all I've done all my life. And I love talking to fellow media people. So please indulge me in this, because I think you're going to get a lot out of it. You're going to get a real understanding of what the media is like, and especially if you're conservative in the media. I swear I was the only card-carrying Republican in the entire 3-story building at 900 Front Street in San Francisco. I was it. If there were any conservatives there, they shut up because they knew you're not going to keep your job. if you're outspoken about it. But I was the token conservative on KSFO, which is 560 AM, heritage radio station. And my studio was right across the hall from KGO, which was the station for decades. Then ABC was purchased from Cap Cities by Disney. Disney fired 1,000 of us all across the country on the same day, New Year's Eve. I'll never forget it. 1995. That's how far back this goes. And ABC has dismantled and destroyed every single one of their broadcast entities ever since. They're great at it. They've finally sold. I don't know if they sold all their ABC properties. I think they did, all the radio stuff, to, was it Cumulus? Which proceeded to dismantle and destroy 2 heritage radio stations, so much so that one of them went dark. Actually went dark and changed formats. KGO wound up changing formats. Now they've changed back with the new company that owns them. And they're trying to get back to their former glory, but it's done is done. People don't listen to the radio anymore. They listen to people like me, not me in particular, but alternative media. And I'm so glad to be a part of that now. Let's get into it with Mark Abrahams right now on Do Not Talk. Ready? Hit it.
Yeah! Woo!
Hello, my friend.
How are you?
I'm borderline amazing, except for this dad-blame pneumonia. Other than that, I'm doing great.
Well, it's like
How
you
about
said
you?
before. Like you said before, I think you have rhinovirus.
I do. I think I do.
See?
I think that's exactly what that was, because there were
anytime your
plenty of them.
sinuses get backed up, they call it rhinovirus.
That's
So,
it. That's right. I'm so glad to have you on, and the audience knows now that if I get to talk to any media people, especially somebody who's attained your status, I get all giddy. I go back to my days when I was on the radio, and I loved it so much. The immediacy of it, how you can reach an audience right then. I still think that AM radio, as the left has tried to take it away, Bill Clinton deregulating ownership rules in the 90s. So the worst thing that ever happened to the business, making it to where these big giant corporations could buy up huge swaths of radio and television and newspapers and dominate what people, that's what the FCC was all about. They were trying to prevent that, always trying to keep any one voice company mindset from controlling all of the media that people are seeing, hearing, listening to. And Bill Clinton ruined it. Nobody's talked about it since then. I've hoped beyond hope that maybe somebody would get control of the FCC and actually get us back to some normalcy and put media back into the hands of local people who are able to own and operate stations. But now the standalone ownership is dwarfed by these big corporations who have so much money, and I don't know how they are surviving, but I'm grateful for them. There's an AM station that I fill in on in my area, Sacramento market, that is called The Patriot, and it's a standalone, one of the few left. And every time I'm on there, I'm like, you don't realize how precious this is. I hope you appreciate this, because this is the one voice in anything having to do with the media that is still independent of the machinations of big corporations. Value this, support it, go to the advertisers that you hear on the station. Tell them, I heard about this. I heard about your business on this radio station. Let them know that. And really support your live and local radio, because it's very few and far between. Are there any in New York now? Any?
honestly, I couldn't tell you. I mean, there are so many, what you were talking about with Clinton deregulating. Basically, what he did right then and there was create an abject violation and toss away of Taft-Hartley Act, creation of monopolies. And that's really what he ended up doing. And even when we were talking before in regard to, getting, and the president had promised this in his campaigns and everything, cutting our energy costs in half. When he deregulated the markets, because the up and comings couldn't go and set up their own infrastructure for electricity, for water, for gas, they had to use the main company's facilities. So the company said, you know what, how can we get around this and make some good money out of it? So rather than charging a fee to these new companies for delivery, that's only a few companies, they went and they charged the consumer a delivery charge. I don't know about you, but I've never been able to go and walk into the electric company with a shopping bag and say, give me 10,000 kilowatts of electric and take it home with me. You've got to go through them. But when you've got millions of consumers that you can charge, as opposed to a few upstart companies, you're essentially, what they did was they doubled the bills. So why, with a stroke of a pen, he hasn't gone and just said, no more re-regulating, and that would cut our utility bills right in half? I don't know. But with the radio and TV stations,
Well, I'm a big fan of free market. And so you're like, how can you justify wanting the FCC to take control of ownership rules again and put it back in the hands of people who are actually in their communities? The FCC used to require you to do a certain amount of local programming. That's why you had what's called PSAs, public service announcements, which the radio stations had to run for free if they were promoting either a nonprofit or some kind of program to help people.
Well, you see, let me just interrupt you there for a second.
Yeah.
That's been an immense pet peeve of mine when it comes to politics. The biggest problem that we've had in this country is that all the politicians are bought and paid for. And why is that? Because if you want to run for Congress, it's going to cost you a minimum of $2 to $3 million. You want to run for Senate, 6 to 10. Okay, for either $180,000 a year job or a $210,000 a year job. After 6 months of which they're all multimillionaires, which is just mind-boggling to begin with. But yeah, when you boil it down to literally what a politician is, and I wholeheartedly believe in boiling down politicians. When you boil, I
wholeheartedly believe in actually boiling some politicians.
Exactly, no matter what the stench is. But once you look at it, what are politicians? They are public servants. So why do they have to pay for advertising on TV and radio and newspaper and this and that and the other? They should be run as PSAs, and then it wouldn't cost as much to run for office. You wouldn't have to watch 7 million of these stupid things during campaign seasons. And it might slightly more legitimize what we're working on. But no, they get away with it.
Well, you and I remember a time that we wanted to have politicians on our shows. We wanted to talk to them. We wanted to be able to ask them questions and hold them accountable. Well, you said this. What did you mean by that? What are you going to do about this? And that's all gone away. The media has absolutely stopped doing that unless you pay for it. That's the only way you're going to get on any platform these days, is you're going to have to buy an advertising block or some commercials. And that's it. And that's awful. I think that's ridiculous. We're not super serving the public. That's for sure.
No.
Some of my lowest rated shows, some of the ones I get the least amount of views, are when I have politicians on. And so I don't know if it's the business that's to blame for it or just the electorate itself, the voters who don't want to hear it and don't want to listen to somebody answer some questions. It's bizarre to me how the apathy just in the voting public. Perhaps if they were demanding that, media would still be doing it. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, apathy is a very, very, very special word when I talk about the people in this country, people in the world, to begin with. Voting is a privilege, and voting is also a right. And I say it on the air all the time. Rights come with responsibilities. But the problem is we've built up people over the past 4 decades, really, ever since Reagan was in office and created the me generation. People have become self-absorbed. They've become ingrained in instant gratification. And when they don't get it, and they don't get the answers, and they get to the point where they feel that, I'm one person. What difference am I going to make?
Oh, I hate that when I hear people say that in my own party. My vote doesn't count anyway.
And what are we doing? We're one person. Each of us is one person. But I go back to the old Clairol commercial back in the 60s, and she told a friend, and she told a friend, and then all of a sudden you got a 64 box on the screen. Well, that's how it starts. But the apathy in this country is just pathetic. And yet, which is the part that drives me insane, you'll see for the new iPhone, for the new Xbox, et cetera, you will see people sleeping on the street for days. Black Friday, lined up out in front of Walmart and a bunch of other people's, from as soon as they put the last piece of pumpkin pie in their faces, they go and they get online and sleep there.
Right.
They can't get their butts out to go and vote on election day.
Right.
And then wonder why we're in the position that we're in.
We get the government that we deserve.
Nobody has done anything to us that we didn't allow to happen.
Right.
And the problem is, and I've said this a billion times on the air, this land that we live in is probably the largest corporation in the world. And as we found out over the past bunch of years, it's literally been a corporation since 1871. So you're dealing in a situation whereby we, the people, are the CEOs, CFOs, COOs of this corporation. And yet we have allowed our employees to run amok and bankrupt our company. And we'll complain about it all the time. But do we do anything about it?
No.
Nope.
And in 2016 and again in 2024, we were able to successfully get President Trump in office. And the attitude ever since then is, okay, well, we did our part. So now we'll just let Trump fix everything.
But something, think back to when you were working in the business. And I look at it, and this is an American mentality. I don't live in Europe. I don't live in Africa or Asia, but I find it to be grossly an American thing, especially in corporate America, where they look at things the way that management in a corporation does. Well, you just saved the corporation billions of dollars last week. What'd you do for me today? And that's how a lot of American people look at it. When I look at I hate using the phrase, but I do it all the time anyway. When I look at the libtards and you sit and you listen to these people, it's very simple. The president could go out and come up with the cure for every disease in the world, and there'd still be TDS. They'd still find something wrong with it. So, you can't please all the people all of the time, but for God's sake, open your eyes.
Amen. What in the business when I was coming up, when I first out of college, I majored in communications, worked on the college radio station, and got my first professional job. And I never looked back. I quit going to college. I thought, well, this is what I wanted to do, so I got my job, so I quit. And I just never looked back. You have to work your way up in market size. And I started off in Fresno. I don't know if you know California very well. That's where I started. And even then, I had people in the business who'd been in for a long time who started in even smaller markets who resented me for that. Who's this kid starting off in a large market? Who does he think he is, kind of thing? You got to work your way up through markets. I finally made it to Sacramento, then to San Francisco. And you got to work your way up there. You got to pay your dues. What's your story?
It's very funny because much like you, I worked my entire career in New York City. My entire career.
Look at you. That's fantastic. That's absolutely unprecedented. Well,
it was one of those situations where, you know, I'm a Brooklyn boy. I was born and raised in Brooklyn. Finally, thank God, escaped when I was 25. But, you know, here I was. I just graduated college. While I was in college, which probably helped to make the difference, I volunteered behind the scenes. So while everybody else was taking, you know, production 101 and learning how to be a producer or a director, which was none of this had anything to do with working in the business. I volunteered behind the scenes with the engineers. And when you volunteer with the engineers, you don't learn how something works. You learn why it works, which is a big difference because, like I've told people all the time, when they call the 5 o'clock news because it goes on at 5. So you could have shot the best story in the world, written it perfectly, edited it perfectly. If it doesn't make air, it doesn't mean squat. So I did that, and I also interned at WNYC, which was one of the city's own stations, and they did a lot of public service shows, et cetera, et cetera. When I graduated college, I had applied to ABC, I had applied to WPIX, and WPIX at that point in time was owned by the Daily News. So it wasn't a freestanding station, but it was.
The Daily News was kind of like AP, Associated Press kind of thing?
Daily News was one of the major papers in the city.
Okay.
It was one of the 3 major papers because at that time you had the Daily News, the Times, and the Post. So, which basically you still have. And I was working, my father had a retail appliance business in Brooklyn, and I was working there, making some cash on this and that and the other. And I come back from a delivery, and he goes, guy from Channel 11 called. He said, I'll call you back in a little bit. Yeah, okay. All right. Well, sure enough, about an hour later, the phone rang, and it was a guy from Channel 11. And had an interview the next day, which was a Friday, and I started there on Monday.
That's television.
Yeah. And well, that's where I spent my entire career, was in television.
You must have been so excited. How old were you then?
I was 22. I just turned 22.
Getting that phone call, that's fantastic, man. Yeah, what a great feeling.
Just out of college.
Yeah.
So I got the call. I went in. I was able to show him what I knew because they wanted me in videotape. So I showed them. They had particular machines, Zampex 2000 2-inch machines. And
great big giant boat anchors.
Oh, yeah. If anybody dropped one of those on your foot, you knew it forever. And
things were getting broken.
No joke.
And it wouldn't be the machine, it'd be you.
Yes, I started there. That was 1976. And making what was it? I was making $140 a week in 1976. At
$140 a week.
1976. So, you know, thankfully I was still living at home at the time. So I didn't have to worry about rent and this and that and the other. But a few months after that, because I was just there as a vacation relief, they had let me go. And I was looking around for stuff, and I get a phone call. I was actually out in California, and I get a phone call from the guy who had hired me. And he goes, listen, Artie broke his leg in the lobby. Can you come back and fill in for him? I said, if you need me, absolutely. So he goes, and you won't take less than $200 a week, right? I said, well, like to make 200 a week. That would be great. He goes, well, you won't take less than 200 a week. And then he clicked around. Oh, absolutely. I won't take less than 200 a week. So he got me back there, and I spent that time until.
That was a good guy right there, man. He was letting you know you could probably make more.
Yep. That was Lou Clement, wonderful guy. And I went back there. And PICS at that time was probably the number one training ground for engineers in New York. If you went to PICS, you learned and you knew what you were doing.
And you had to have a first phone, as they called it. There was a time you were required to be licensed with the FCC, and you had to go through a lot of tests to get your first class license. That was a big deal, but it was required if you're going to work on AM and FM for a while. Then they deregulated that, made it just AM because of the intricate patterns of the towers. You had to understand how daytime, you had daytime signals, you had nighttime signals, so they don't bleed over into another market. And so you had to know all that because you're the one taking the readings once an hour. You had to take the readings all the time.
Yep.
They don't even do that anymore.
No. Transmitters are all automated. They have a transmitter guy just in case it goes down. But above and beyond that, nobody's really monitoring anything anymore because nobody's watching the cash register anymore. And so that April, I got hired at ABC, and which was a wonderful thing. You know, here I am at the number one station, number one market.
Was that Cap Cities at the time?
No, that was ABC.
No, I understand, but that was owned by Cap Cities, Capital Cities.
No, this was 8 years.
When I worked for them, they were Capital Cities, and I loved the company. I loved it. I was going to retire there. I was never going to leave.
Well, Cap Cities knew nothing but how to make money.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
they were good at it.
They were and they shared with their employees, which was wonderful. Yes. Unlike the rat. You know, the rat was
unlike the rat, yeah.
But back then it was ABC. It was owned by oh, for Christ's sake. All that came to mind was Silverstein. I know it's not him. Samuelson. But I started with them, worked there for 5 weeks, went out on strike for 20, which was just wonderful. But then came back the following after the strike and this and that and the other, and worked there for 43 years. So I had 46
Let's talk about unions. Let's talk about unions. Out here, San Francisco used to be a union market. Maybe it still is. I don't know. But after it's just it's not, didn't exist anymore. It got absorbed by SAG, Screen Actors Guild.
Yep.
But it used to be the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists. And you had to join that union if you're going to work in that market. I've never been a union guy because I've always believed that it's the antithesis of free market, because we price ourselves right out of being competitive with anyone else. And my favorite story about working for a union in a union shop was I could not hit record. I go into the production room after being on the air, and I'm gonna record something, a commercial, whatever it is. I had to go and find an engineer, and there were several of them on payroll because it was a union thing. Now, engineer to most of us means they're working on transmitters, they're fixing equipment that goes down and so on. That's what an engineer does, but not when you're in a union. I had to go find it. They did that. Plus, whenever I wanted to record something, I had to go get an engineer. He had to come in and hit record.
And stop.
And then I would do my thing, and I'd had to go find an engineer again while the tape's rolling still and say, would you please come back in and stop the reel-to-reel? Yeah, I'll be right there. And that was usually the attitude. I go, this is just a 30-second spot. Can you just wait here so I don't have to go get you again? No, come get me. Okay. Record, stop. And my fellow employees there, because they all knew I was a conservative, they thought it'd be really funny to make me the shop steward. So I had to go to the monthly union meetings and rat out the station. That's what a steward is supposed to do. Oh, they're mistreating us. And they told me to go ahead and hit record on by myself. We couldn't even turn on our microphones, by the way. We had to have a producer for that. Turn our microphones on and off when we were in studio. We had a cough button. That was it. We could not turn on the microphone. That's how out of control it was. As these unions, to justify their phony baloney jobs, would continue to push for we, the talent, to do less and less work and get paid more and more money. How is that sustainable? It's not. What happened because of the unions, it made it too cost prohibitive to even have talent on. So they started putting on what's called, you put it on the bird, you got these satellite formats or these satellite talent, like Rush Limbaugh was a satellite talent. He didn't start out that way, but he was premier out of Los Angeles, premier radio. And everybody ran the same thing. And there were those studios were dark when you'd have these shows on. There's nobody in there. And that was because we priced ourselves right out of the frickin' market, just like I said we would. Was it that bad out there in New York?
Well, you got to remember, New York, much like California, the stations were unionized. But I think what killed unions, well, let me start with the other side of it. I think the unions were a necessary evil because the companies themselves were evil. You know, when you work in corporate America, and let's face it, that's what we did. We worked in corporate America. And especially after 1985, when corporate America took over the business. If you remember back then, they became very, 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 very management heavy. Mm. And they became management heavy because they were trying to eliminate the lower echelon jobs, which would be a lot of the union people. You okay?
I had to mute the microphone so you didn't have to listen to that. I hit the cough button.
Did you call anybody in for it?
No.
But
this is a non-union shop.
It was one of those things where it was necessary to have somebody to protect your job, because if you looked at somebody cockeyed, boom, you were gone. If a manager had a hard on,
he's not kidding. He's not kidding. I had a 6-figure gig in San Jose, South Bay of San Francisco, huge market, and we had the double-digit ratings on the morning show I was on. We were doing extremely well. And I almost got fired because I said something on the air that offended the sales manager's girlfriend. He's not kidding. That's the worst part about being a talent is everybody controls your future. Even if you have great ratings and you're doing extremely well, when it's management top heavy like that, he's completely right. Anybody, even an advertiser, gets offended at something that you say, and they pull all their advertising because of that. That happened to me when I worked for CBS, and I called Michael Eisner, then CEO of Disney, the Antichrist. And Disney got very offended and canceled all the advertising for Disneyland and everything else on the radio station with CBS. And I almost lost my job over that. They wanted me to go on the air and apologize. And apologize to who? You think Michael Eisner's listening? Think he's tuning into the show because he's having a good old time? Come on. So I refused to, and so they suspended me, and it was just a big deal, made all the media and everything. And I turned it into I was going on vacation. They did it for a publicity stunt. What are you talking about?
Well, no, see, but by us, and I guess because it was television as opposed to radio, you had multiple unions in the one shop.
IBEW comes to mind.
IBEW and NABIT were the basic ones in New York. You had IATSE for the stagehands. You had AFTRA for the talent. You had the Writers Guild for the writers and the producers and the assignment desk people. So you had a whole bunch of unions there.
Right.
And
nobody talked to each other.
Oh, no, we all got along.
Good.
But it was everybody had a different modus operandi. And when you looked at the way that things went, because at one point I went to run for international president of NABIT. And it was mainly because of the fact that I saw, you've got to look at it pragmatically. Unions are businesses. Okay. They might be there. They might have been founded as help organizations, but they are businesses. And any member of the union is a client. But when you start not protecting your clients and they get laid off, your client base is dwindling. Thus, your business is losing out. And what I tried to do is try to convince them that what we should do is form one national union, not a whole bunch of locals, because that's what they did. And that's what they did. That's what they did with this country, is divide and conquer. You get out the Ginsu knife and you cut down to little pieces. You've got no power. What negotiating power do you have against Disney or against cap cities? Nothing.
No.
So, the threat of a strike, they don't care. I was out on strike twice during my career, once in 77 and once in 98. So, it's a lose-lose situation. Pretty much so the only thing the union does at that point is they guaranteed you a pay level and they guaranteed you a pension. And even now at this point, the guys beyond me don't have pensions.
No. And I didn't either. People assume that I did. Oh, you work for these big networks. You must have a nice retirement. No, they didn't even offer that. And there was no such thing as a 401k, really. So you didn't even get to pay into your own retirement. And I'm now that fixed income guy that I always said I would never be. Didn't think that would happen, but I am. I didn't plan carefully, money-wise, for retirement because I always thought I was going to work. I got jobs quickly and easily. And I used to, market jump all the time because I was trying to get bigger and better. And of course, the bigger market you get, the more money you make. And that's what it was all about. For me, at least. Plus my love of it. I have more friends who are audience members than I do in the business. I didn't have that many friends in the business because for the most part, I thought these are really weaselly people. But when you get to the level that Mark attained in New York and in San Francisco and in Los Angeles, the really bad people, for the most part, have been weeded out. And I loved working for ABC. I loved capital cities. And like I said, I was going to retire there. I wasn't going to leave. I loved every single second of it and was grateful for it. But the business itself has just died. People don't listen to the radio anymore. Everything they want and need is right here on their phone. They don't need me to tell them the weather. They don't need me to tell them what fun things are coming up this weekend. They don't need me to tell them the time. That was a big deal on the morning show. We did what's called double time. You could say 7:12, 12 minutes after 7 o'clock. You always said it twice because, people they passively listen for the most part.
No,
that was a service. That was providing a service. They don't need that anymore. They don't need us. And they can hear their favorite song. They don't have to wait for me to play it. They can hear it anytime they want now. Everything on their phone.
But that's the difference also between radio and TV. I mean, I've got, I'd say, more than a few years on you. But you look at it in the sense of, did you ever in a billion years think that you were going to, if you wanted to really listen to radio, you'd have to pay for it?
Crazy. Satellite radio, yeah.
Did you ever think that for the most part, with the advent of cable and how it sprung up really rapidly when big business started taking over the media back in 85, did you ever think that you'd have thousands upon thousands of channels to look at and yet you'd pay for other services because what's on the air sucks? This is where we are. And it's like people want freedom of choice. But again, with freedom comes responsibility. You got the freedom of choice, but what are they putting out there? They're putting out crap.
Yeah.
Hollywood hasn't put out a good movie in decades. All they do is they rebrand old stuff with special effects and think it's going to sell. And Disney with its woke ideas, I was so happy to see Snow White crash and burn.
That was ridiculous.
It's absolutely ridiculous. I finished, because I just like shows like that. I finished watching the last season of Stranger Things the other day. And I'm sitting and I'm watching, I'm saying, you got a good plot base, a sci-fi plot base and things. There's good action in it and good, makes you think a lot. Did they really have to throw in the gay thing? They really have to throw in the interracial couple
It's all
thing.
posturing. And that's because so much of the media business is dominated by the homosexual mafia, especially Disney.
Well, it's a funny thing when Disney took us over, and I've never been a PC person, and I've always been a very irreverent person.
Attaboy.
And I was the only one at WABC who was trained on everything. Some of the maintenance guys used to refer to me as the most dangerous person in the building because I could take them down in a heartbeat. So one day I was working in RF, which is where all the truck signals come in from.
RF stands for radio frequency.
Exactly. So I'm sitting there in RF, and RF was in its own room. But right outside the door was the edit supervisor's desk and a row of closets. So I was standing talking to the edit supervisor and this and that and the other, and he happened to go, this was, I think, 1996 or 97. So Disney was already entrenched, and said, I heard there's a new producer coming in. So I said, really? And I walked across to one of the closets, opened the door, and then shut it. I go, I guess he's not here yet. And the guy almost fell right out of his chair because I opened the closet and nobody came out. So it was just, this was the type of situation that you worked in, but you couldn't say anything. You couldn't, if you wanted to say jokes, and it's funny because one of the best times, one of my good friends was a reporter by the name of Anthony Johnson, black guy. And we're in the truck one day, and we always used to trade jokes and this and that and the other. And he looks at me and goes, you know how every black joke begins, don't you? I'm going, oh God, here we go. No, how? And he goes, yeah, this is what it was. And we could do that outside of the building. But boy, you did that in the building, you were out of the building real fast.
Oh, everybody knew. Our GM, general manager at ABC in San Francisco, as I affectionately call it, was very left, as everybody. I mean, that's corporations made sure of it because they were. And so those are the people that they hired and promoted. Now, he was great. He was a great general manager and will always be, in my mind, the best I've ever worked for. Mickey Luckoff is his name. And he never said, Charlie, keep your conservative opinions to yourself. Never. Because first of all, I was the token Republican on the station. And but everybody knew, because I would have editors, producers, the program director. I got in big trouble one time and got the station boycotted by the homosexual community. Imagine that. Because of something I said about the city council and how stupid it was that they had passed a law in the city of San Fran. You could not send a dude home and tell him, dress like a man. I don't want to allow you to dress like a woman when you're at work. And they passed a law that you couldn't do that within the city limits. And I went on the air, just railed on it. And the backlash of that was so intense. And they were boycotting not just KSFO, but both KGO Television, Channel 7, and KGO Radio, and all the advertisers. And it was just a big deal. And the media lost their minds. The San Francisco Chronicle, Herb Cain especially, who hated me already, was bashing me every single week. And I just thought, well, shoot, I'll be darned. Just because I said something that's common sense, I'm going to lose this job. But to his credit, Mark, Mickey Luckoff did not fire me, even though he was immensely pressured to do so. To his credit, I don't know of anybody in management these days who would do that. Oh, boom, you're gone, just like that. He said something, especially the homosexual mafia. the homo mafia, you say something to offend any of them, that's it, you're out. And that's how they have successfully shut us up, shut us down, and made it normal. They've made it normal. That's been the job. That was the devil's plan all along, is just to make it seem normal. And people like me who come along and go, no, that's not normal. Oh, yeah, you don't have a place on the radio or television anymore. Get out. I know many people are fired for things like that.
This is what we went through. This is why we had unions, because these people, for no good reason, very, very good friend of mine was a reporter and an anchor. When you're the daily anchor on the morning show, you've reached a certain level of prestige, very well known, this and that and the other. Was having trouble with two of the other people in the morning show. Somebody went and reported to HR that he said something that he never said. Fired him on the spot, created a whole scenario.
You serious?
Fired him on the spot. Long story short, of course, after they held him hostage for a year, they didn't give him his back pay or anything, and he couldn't work anywhere else. He finally went to court over it, and his attorney proved that there was no basis to their case whatsoever, and he got handsomely taken care of. But this is the type of area and the mentality that we're living in now.
They will ruin you.
Unfortunately, it's necessary to have the unions, because until we get back on a level playing field, you need that protection, because this mafia that they've created. I went to one of the Reawaken America tours.
I did too. I appreciated it. I liked them.
I think 3 or 4 of them. And this one I went to in Pennsylvania, and I knew better, but I did it anyway. There was a reporter from NPR. Came up to me and said, can I talk to you? I'm saying to myself, don't do this. But I said, okay. And this was when all the trans stuff was starting to come around. So she starts talking to me. We're talking about a bunch of different topics. And she brings up this thing about the trans people. So I said, let me explain something to you. If I'm at a mall, or I'm at an amusement park, or anything like that with large crowds, and my wife, my daughter, my granddaughter goes into the bathroom, and some guy in a dress comes along and goes to go in the bathroom. If he hasn't completed his transition, I will finish it for him. Well, of course, that became a homophobic statement. You can't win. And it's the same thing that they've done with, anti-Semitism, racism, all the different phobias that they've heaped on us, all the different adjectives that they use to divide us and make us, rather than focusing on the prize, which is taking back our country, taking back our world, we're fighting each other. You look at the division that religion has caused throughout ever. You look at the division that they did with welfare, so dividing the rich from the poor, or the middle class from the poor. How they went since 2000 to effectively eliminate the middle class. All of these different divisions that they've put in, and that has systemically come into the media. Let's not forget that, because I've said for a long time now, the media is probably the most important arm of the cabal.
Yeah.
Because how else are you going to get the information out to that many people? And yet, in turn, if it wasn't for the internet, we wouldn't be where we are right now.
No. Thank God for Elon Musk buying Twitter.
Yep.
I'm not kidding. That was an extraordinary thing that happened. Why do you think so many countries banned Twitter. You can't even get them in China and several other countries. I think India too, oddly enough. I don't know where you stand faith-wise. I'm a follower of Christ Jesus. I'm a born-again Christian. And I'm reading the Bible. There's this one verse about the devil is a ruler of the air. And that bothered me for a long time. I thought, what does that mean? Ruler of the air. And then I believe it was the Holy Spirit that revealed to me one time when I'm reading it again. What goes through the air? What goes through the air? Broadcast, satellite, even cable goes through the air. It starts off at what they call a microwave dish called that. I'm not thinking of the term right now because I'm not an engineer. It all, though, goes through the air. What do we get in the media, radio, television, and even newspaper, too? The devil rules the air. And there's so many people in the business who are weak. They don't take your stance like you do, Mark. You know that. You've worked with these people your entire career who are just weak. They don't take a stand on anything because they want to keep their jobs. Well, I've never been of that mindset. And that's been both a blessing and a curse. But I've paid for it. I have paid for it in ways that most people are not willing to if they're going to take a stand like that. I believe that the devil, you say that it's the tool of the cabal. Absolutely. And I think that they're all doing the devil's work just as quickly as possible for his time is short.
There's no doubt about it. This is a situation whereby the media, radio, TV, print, and people have to remember that's not all the media. Movies, music, dance, everything.
Good point.
Of the media. You want to go back to the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not worship false idols. What have we done since before I was born? Okay.
We've made celebrities idols.
That's right. We've made people
basketball stars,
TV.
Football stars, baseball stars. We've all made them idols.
That's right. And we pay to see them and we worship them. And people will go, even now with the alternative media, which has just become the new MSM for the most part. There are very, very few people out there who put out anything that's worthwhile. And I say that only because of the fact that while I believe in Q as a military operation, while I believe in the plan, I have referred to the Q drops as mental masturbation. It's something to keep the patriots busy and occupied and not losing faith.
I was just going to say, and encouraged.
Yeah, because in reality, all wars have psychological operations. This is the only war that any of us have ever been through that is a psychological operation. And by virtue of that, with very smart commanders in the military and I refer to the grouping as, because I don't look at the president as, this is his doing. It's like the Rolling Stones. The military is the Rolling Stones and he's Jagger. He's the front man. But they had to pick somebody who's a good poker face and a good poker player and smart. And what they did was put this out, but they're not going to divulge any plans because the military operates on a need-to-know basis. And quite frankly, we do not need to know. When stuff happens, it'll happen. The ending might not be for everybody. That's life. But this is the type of situation that we're dealing in. So the mainstream, the alternative media now has become the mainstream media in the sense that a lot of these people are putting out shows about the Q drops and this and that and the other and interpreting it's going to go here. And
oh, you have your anons everywhere.
Yeah. And facts being what they are, because my whole shtick on my show has been journalistic integrity, because that got lost starting back in 1985. And what the people who are doing this now, yes, you could do a lot of decodes on the Q drops, et cetera, et cetera. It's your opinion. And your opinion is not fact. That's your best guess. So we have a lot of juggling to do. And people, the popular phrase now is learn to discern. People have to learn to discern. I forget what movie it was from, but I always love the line, use your head. That's that big lump 2 feet above your 3 feet above your butt. So it's that type of a situation. And people have to start, when they call this the Great Awakening, okay? I think the spiritualistic aspect of it is the most important aspect, because you really have to go within and learn to discern in the sense of what truly resonates with you. It's like, what's the definition of a journalist? Journalists are supposed to go out there, ascertain the facts of a story, deliver those facts to the public, and let them determine what is real and what's not. Not go in and insert your own opinion because you don't believe in what the president's doing, or you don't believe what the left is doing, you don't believe it. I told reporters all the time, you're not smart enough to give me your opinion. And I had one, I actually started the line. This was back in the 90s. We had a reporter who will remain nameless, who literally made up stuff. We go out on a story, I'd shoot stuff and get back to the truck, go to edit it, and I'd listen to his, what he's writing as his track, and go, what the hell are you doing? We don't, not only don't we have any video to cover that, you don't have any sound to back up what you're saying. And I finally said to him, never let facts get in the way of a good story. And that's where we are with the news business. And that's where a lot of the alternative media has gone now. And it's very sad in a time when we're really, really, really looking for truth. A lot of people are still falling into the old ways and accepting what the idiot in front of the camera, and I include myself in that, is saying. Don't trust me because you like my face. You've got more information at your fingertips now than you ever did before.
Yeah.
And people are lazier than they've ever been.
There's two things to prevent all of this from you becoming that statistic, that bad statistic that I believe. One is to actually read God's word. You can't be fooled if you're actually reading the word for yourself. Start in the New Testament, start with the book of John. It's the fourth of the four gospels, last of the four gospels, encapsulates Jesus's life on earth, and what happened afterwards comes after John, which is Acts, Romans, Hebrews, and read the New Testament. A chapter a day keeps false teachers away. It's the best advice I can give to anybody. The other one is, it's a word that you mentioned just a second ago, discern. Jesus himself told us to pray for discernment so that we cannot be fooled. We know what's of God and what's of the devil. And it is that basically black and white. It's either good or it's evil, especially when it comes to media. There doesn't seem to be any in between. They love blurring lines. They love making black and white gray. Yes, homosexuality is a sexual sin. Except, is it really? And isn't that what the devil did to Eve in the Garden of Eden? Is it really? Did God really say that? Did he really mean that? That's what they do. So pray for discernment. Every time you pray, Lord, please give me discernment. Please let me understand what's of you and what isn't, so I can't be fooled. Ask for it. We have not because we ask not. Ask for it.
He talks to us every day. That little rumbling that you get in your stomach is God talking to you and giving you information. But as my soon to be former partner used to say on the air, then your monkey brain kicks in. And when your monkey brain kicks in, and it's a phrase I use for myself all the time, you give me a 50-50 chance, I'll always choose the wrong 50. So it's like the old cartoons. You got the devil sitting on one shoulder and, the angel sitting on the other. Don't do that. Do it. Really. So it's that type of situation. And we'll always, rather than listening, going introspective and listening to that voice inside, we let the monkey brain kick in. And we go and we do what we want. 99% of the time, it's the wrong decision. And it's very, very important to listen, because spiritually, I think that's where we lost it. The difference, I've had many discussions with Sheila Home, which is she's just
With who?
Sheila Home. You never heard of Sheila Home?
No.
Yeah, she's very, very, very smart woman. Has written a number of books, et cetera, et cetera. And I was raised in a Jewish family, but I'm not religious. I think that religion is a crock, really. It's a control mechanism. When asked about the Bible, I hope you don't take offense to this, but when asked about the Bible, my opinion...
You can't offend me.
My opinion was to be, and I'm never PC, but to be PC, because it's a touchy subject, I said, none of us were there. The Bible has been transcribed by man. Man is inherently flawed. Thus, the Bible itself is flawed. But what Sheila talks about is the Father. Now, what's the main difference between Judaism and Christianity? Christians believe that Jesus was the Savior, was the Messiah. The Jews don't believe the Messiah has come yet. That's pretty much the main difference. But so what? Jesus' teachings were the teachings of the Father. That's why it's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So the teachings were that of the Father. So whether you're following Jesus or you're following the Father directly, you're doing the same thing. Stop letting the preachers tell you what you're supposed to be doing.
Yes. I agree. Read it for yourself.
Exactly. Learn to discern, and that in turn stops the division. After some of the hijacking, put it this way, I'll go back into the 60s. Okay. Everybody was tired after World War II, came away with a victory. Then all of a sudden you're into Korea. Okay. Nobody realizing the fact that they started all these wars because it made money for them, made money for the cabal. Then you got Vietnam, which wasn't a war. That was a police action. We sent a whole bunch of cops over there, but it was just a disaster. But people now, later 60s, are protesting. They've had enough of the wars and this and that and the other. Okay, what the hell are we going to do here? Okay, let's take us completely off of the gold standard. Now we can start printing funny money.
One of the worst things Richard Nixon ever did.
Yep. Which Stupid. I think he was probably made to do. I don't think he had that control. Take us off the gold standard. And if you look at a graph, this is another thing that when I say my partner, I don't want people to get the wrong connotation here. I'm married, I have kids and grandkids, but my partner is Dave from News Treason. Dave and I set...
From where?
News Treason. Fairly big platform. We started out a couple of years ago with about 4,000 people, and now it's encroaching on 67,000 registered
Well
users.
done.
So I forgot what I was saying.
You're talking about your partner, Dave, or as you said earlier, soon to be former partner.
Well, yeah, soon to be, because I'm retiring. I'm going to be 72 this summer, and I'm tired. I've had enough. But
you've aged well, sir.
Thank you. I feel good. And that's not died, as you can see.
That's not died.
No.
Wow. Well done.
So, when we would deal with these things, and you look at it. He started a graph, or he made a graph that showed from 1971, from when we went off the gold standard to present day. If you looked at crime statistics, and that's just all kinds of crime, rape, murder, larceny, et cetera, it kind of ebbed and flowed, but never really got to high levels prior to 71. You look beyond 71, it was like a huge spike up in all related crimes. And why? Because money wasn't worth anything. And it gradually became worth less and less and less.
Monopoly money. It's only worth as much as they tell us it's worth.
And it got to the point where, which is what they wanted to do in order to break up the family. I grew up, probably you also grew up in a family where only one person had to work, and your mother was home and made sure that, you got your homework done, et cetera, and ran shotgun over you to make sure you were behaving. But then it became one salary didn't cut it anymore.
Right.
So you had to have two people working.
Not an accident.
No.
Not an accident.
So
the ruination of the family structure, which is what the devil's all about.
Bingo. But one thing that I've said a million times, who's the bad guy? The devil who offers you whatever you want in exchange for your soul, or the person who sells his soul in exchange for what he wants?
Right.
And this is the more of the discernment, because the main thing that has to be done for this war not to be successful, the war is already over. It just hasn't been publicly revealed yet. But in order for things to have legs, to have any kind of longevity, human nature has to change. And we have to stop with all the adjectives. We have to get away from selfishness and get back to selflessness. We have to come closer to the Father. It's really very simple. But
we have generations of parents who have raised their children to, you can do anything. The T-ball generation, everybody gets a participation trophy, was the worst thing ever.
Yep.
So we now have a huge amount of our fellow citizens who believe that everything's about them. They've made themselves God. And even if they are going to church, it's all, well, how does this apply to me? Or how does the Bible apply to life today? Well, God has not changed. The Bible has not changed, except for translations, as you said. But the only thing that's changed is you.
Yep.
You and your attitude. You're absolutely right. I love this.
And this is what the powers that be have done to us. This is exactly what the powers that be have done to us. And one of the things I've railed about on my show a number of times is we have to start policing our own. A lot of the beliefs that we cling to and a lot of the beliefs that we have stemmed from our childhood. Whatever faith you were raised in, that was taught to you, and you don't question authority, and you don't question the priest, the rabbi, or anybody else. Well, they should have questioned a lot of priests decades ago, and a lot of rabbis also, and a lot of imams. They're all, like I said, they're all control mechanisms, because if they don't hold on to their flock, just like I said before about the unions, they're out of business. Mm-hmm. They're going to have to go out and get a job. It's easier to fill your head with, you're being a sinner. You're not following what I told you. In Judaism, the laws of being kosher. Mm-hmm. What a crock. I'm sorry. We have a thing called refrigeration now. Okay. That piece of pork isn't going to kill you unless you don't cook it. So, you want to have bacon and eggs for breakfast. And you have so many people who are in Judaism and in Christianity who are what we refer to with the Jews, high holiday Jews. That's when they go to synagogue.
Yeah.
Same thing with Christians. Oh yeah, I go on Easter, I go on Christmas.
Easter and Christmas. I call them creasters. Christmas and Easter. Yes.
So, this is where you are. But yet they have a holier than thou attitude.
Mm.
And we have to start policing our own and say, knock off the crap. Stop it. This whole thing with the Holocaust. You mentioned the word Holocaust. Well, it's all about the Jews. No, there were tens of millions of other people.
Catholics,
Christians,
man, one of them.
Catholics, priests, gays, infirm, mentally retarded, the whole 9 yards, gypsies. They took them out. Okay. But no, it's all about the Jews. And that was planned. It was planned that way to get it.
And it still continues. I was asking a Jewish friend of mine at the convention just this past weekend. We were talking about this. And she goes, well, everybody's always saying that the Jews control Hollywood. Okay, well, let me ask you this. How come every single movie that comes out about World War II or any kind of oppressive regime like that is always against Nazism? But I have yet to see a film about Mao Zedong, who 6 million allegedly or supposedly were killed during Nazi Germany's reign of terror. 60 million in China. And everybody's silent. Well, that's because they're on board. They're so ensconced in communism. You'll ask a socialist, what makes you, this never worked throughout history. What makes you think we can make it work? Well, they did it wrong. Oh, you're so much
You're
better.
going to do it right.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just stupid. It's really stupid. And then the other line, the chosen people. You know who the chosen people are? All of us. We are all created in God's image. We're all the chosen people. But these lines have come down throughout generations. And just like they used to say in the business, I'm sure you had the same thing in radio, past practice. Well, past practice holds a lot of truth, because once you've done something long enough, kind of becomes the rule. A lot of these lies that have been propagated throughout the decades have to stop. And the Jews have to police other Jews, and Christians have to police other Christians. And the Muslims, look what we did after 9/11. Okay? You were Muslim, you didn't want to walk down the street. Now people are learning.
And now he's mayor of New York.
Oh, God. And what is New York City? The 5 boroughs is probably one of the largest Jewish enclaves in the world besides Israel.
But they elected Mamdani. I'm still stunned by all that.
Well, I like to refer to him differently, because if you rearrange the letters in his name, it's I Madman. So, it is pretty funny with him. But, people have to start policing their own. Okay, we blamed the whole thing on the Muslims, which is what I started to talk about before with the ever since 1971. So we got through that. Then in the 80s, what happened? We started having hijackings. By who? Oh, those lousy Muslims. And then you had the Achille Lauro, and you had the embassy bombings. You had the first attempt on World Trade in 93. And then you had 9/11. And the funny part about it is, having in 2001, I was already in the business for 25 years. I covered many, many implosions in my career. But 2 main things. Number one, the emotion of the day. I was actually supposed to be in the North Tower that day because Alan Hevesy, who was the New York City comptroller at the time, it was primary day. He was running for re-election. So my partner and I were supposed to be in North Tower. But our boss, in his infinite wit and wisdom and being cheap, said, you know what, it's going to be a long day. Come in at 10:30. Saved our lives. But there's no doubt about the fact, you had the emotion of the day. And then you also deal with the fact, and this was my line up until maybe about 8-9 years ago. And the key part of this line is, in a situation like that. But I would say, in a situation like that, who would ever think that the government would lie to your face? And they did. Because when you implode a building, it's not just how the building collapses on itself, but after it collapses, there's a dust cloud that slowly creeps across the ground and then starts to rise and envelop the area. And it's a very patent way in which it happens, because we used to be on buildings in Newark, New Jersey, a couple of blocks away when they were imploding the tenements there. And, they'd blow the whistle, you'd watch the thing collapse, you'd shoot the dust cloud coming up, and then the building person would say, okay, everybody off, because they wanted us off before all the asbestos reached us and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very, very evident, if you put aside the fact that it was impossible for planes to have gone into the building. And we also just found out, evidently, that the plane that was, I think, the one that went into Shanksville was supposed to...
Pennsylvania, yeah.
Yeah, was supposed to leave from Ohio. And they canceled the flight because of an emergency and took everybody off the plane. Now, between the 4 planes, there was allegedly 200 passengers. But when they evacuated that flight in Ohio, they removed 200 passengers. And there's always been rumors, did those flights ever take off? Were there anybody on those flights? We know now that there weren't any planes. So how did a lot of that come about?
Let me backtrack a little bit here. 2 things. One, he used the word implode, and now I realize that's not by accident, and he's right. The evidence is just too overwhelming. I had Richard Gage on one of my shows, and he woke me the hell up. He's an architect, and he goes, Charlie, look at this. This is what would happen normally in such a situation. Why would the buildings collapse like that? Why did the 3rd building collapse when no plane even hit it?
Bingo. And remember one key thing.
He spelled it out with pictures and video, and I was like, son of a bitch. I was so mad. I was so disappointed. I'm old enough that I remember the excitement of the bicentennials in 1976. That's why I'm wearing this shirt. We got our 250th birthday coming up, and I don't see anybody excited about it. It's the weirdest thing to me. But that was not an accident. There were explosives that were set inside that building. It's so completely apparent to me now. But I was so hurt, Mark. I was so I felt just betrayed. And then that turned to anger. And a lot of people from there, it just turns into, oh, well, what can I do about it? But I'm not that guy. I never get to that point to where I say, oh, well, what can I do about it? I'm going to continue trying to do something about it. Through me, it's just educating, I guess, doing what I do, trying to let people know, no, wait, look at this. Take another look. Because I was there. I didn't realize. I didn't believe either. And every time somebody said, oh, George W. Bush was in on it. And so I'm like, oh, come on. Now I kind of think maybe that's true.
Absolutely. Because you got to remember, there's a key element that you're leaving out here. First of all, to me, what turned my mind. Now you have to figure, I spent my career as an engineer. Okay. And when you look at the fact that visually and sound-wise, a scenario was created that people believed they saw planes going into the building. Okay. To me, there was no way in hell they had that type of technology back in 2001. We've learned differently now. Operation Bluebeam, blah, 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 blah. But to me, that was an impossibility. But when I saw the documentary put out by 3 architects that showed that it was impossible for the planes, to go into the building. And also you think about the fact that, let's say for argument's sake, due to the laws of physics, you got a plane traveling 550 miles an hour, hits the building, happens to hit where the windows are. So maybe the body of the plane goes in. Those wings are going to shear off.
There'd be parts of the plane all over down below.
Where were they? Where's the black box? Okay. Then they talk about the fact that steel, never mind steel that was encased in
Jet fuel doesn't burn hot enough to melt steel.
Right. It only burns to 1,800 degrees, whereas what's needed to melt the steel is at least 4,000 degrees. The only thing that can do that is thermite. But what I was getting at is the key element to this. We mentioned Building 7. What happened the day before 9/11?
Insurance policy. Pretty big insurance policy.
Besides the insurance, well, that was actually 2 weeks before. But the day before, somehow or another, Rumsfeld misplaces $2.3 trillion.
Trillion.
Yeah, with a T.
Did the press announcement. We have no idea where it is. Trillion.
Now, in the basement of Building 7, first of all, where the missile hit the Pentagon was Rumsfeld's office and where all those records were kept. He happened to be on the other side of the building at the time. In Building 7 were the backup files, a gold depository, New York City Mayor's Emergency Office, and the Office of Emergency Management backup office. And yet a building that was not hit had a menial fire going, collapsed in the same exact manner as the Twin Towers. In spite of the fact that a BBC reporter, 20 minutes prior to the building collapse, stated the building behind her had collapsed while it's still there. So there are so many.
No kidding.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. These are all documented things. So there's a lot there. And recently somebody did a show, I won't say who it was, but somebody did a show where they played another documentary. There was a Fox News chopper guy who was up that morning, guy I happen to know. And he got a shot of the plane that came in over Jersey that hit the South Tower. But since then, and since the advent of digital editing, there are many things that you can do. Now, as an engineer, like I said before, I was trained on, the only one at WABC who was trained on everything. I had to train other people. So I trained people on editing, including digital editing. They were stating that he had on a laptop in the chopper the software, Avid software, to allow him to create what they call a mask. So a mask is basically it's what they used to do with wipes on a switcher. You could basically cordon off part of the picture, and then you could make it look like the plane comes in one side, and then you don't see it on the other side. But because he was in the chopper and things were moving, the mask moved, and you saw the nose of the plane come out the other side. Well, to anybody who worked in the business, that's an NFW. Okay, I'm being a good boy. I'm not dropping the F-bomb, but that's an NFW. There's no way that's going to happen. There's no physical way that a plane could do that. But there have been so many shots that they put out there, mostly on alternative media. This is why I said you have to discern. That shows the plane going through the building. And that's because people have the availability now, even at home, to play digitally with this stuff and show.
But there are so many cell phones. Cell phone cameras were pretty still not what they are now. But still, though, there was a lot of cell phone footage and footage, not just from news organizations, showing the planes hitting the building. And the explosion and the fire was most definitely real. The people jumping literally jumping to keep from being burned alive. They'd rather jump to their death and take their chances. That was not CGI. That was not computer generated images. Somebody was trying to convince me that the planes themselves, that was a mass. It was an image that was almost projected into the sky, and that wasn't really a plane. Say it again.
That's Project Bluebeam.
See, I don't know about that.
Yeah,
I don't know about that.
Is, and they had done it. I forget how many years ago. Not in the distant past, but sometime recently, in an arena or a gymnasium or something, where they projected a whale, a holographic whale that looked like this whale was right there in there with you moving around. So they have the ability to do that. I just didn't believe that they had the ability to do it back then. But they very obviously.
I don't either. That was 25 years ago. Of course, Disney's been doing innovative stuff like that since the 90s, haven't they?
But we're not talking about Disney or any of the major corporations. We're talking about the U.S. government. There's a lot more technology
with unlimited money.
That's right. That's right. So there's just so much there that is going on that people just really don't understand and don't see, because, like I said, with the government lying to you, they went on that day and said, yeah, the planes hit the building and this and that and the other, and these Muslims did it, blah, 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 blah. And the reason the buildings collapsed was because of the heat of the jet fuel caused the steel to weaken and collapsed. So
from the top down, if it were on the bottom floors, maybe I could say, okay, but from the top and then the whole entire building collapses because of that. Come on. And falling straight down like that, just like you talked about the demolition crews, they plant explosives on each floor to get it to compress like that.
Yep.
And why did the third building fall? It was never even hit by a plane. Nobody talks about that.
Yep.
Where were the plane parts at the Pentagon?
Where was anything in Shanksville? You had a crater that looked like every single missile strike you've ever seen. Where was the luggage? Where were the bodies? It didn't exist. But we bought it. And why did we buy it? Because we've all been brainwashed by the media. This is something, I grew up
because you have patriotic flag waving guys like me are like, no, my own government would never do anything so heinous against its own people.
That's right. Little did we know. And this is what it is. And you had people that day on the air. And you had, what's his face, who was with it? Peter Jennings. The plane flew through the building. No, Peter. Plane didn't fly through
I was working for Clear Channel at the time. On that morning, I was doing my morning show for Clear Channel, which is the largest radio station owning company in the world. At least it used to be. And so it was big, and we had resources that a lot of the little independents did not, equipment-wise and so on, technology and so on. The internet went down because it was so flooded, so many people jumping on there. So you'll love this story, Mark. I wound up being on the air for 10 and a half hours that day. Peter Jennings kind of built his career on staying on forever, like he did during the whole beginning of the Iraq War. What was that? Operation Desert Storm. He was on there for like some crazy 21 hours or something like that. Well, I did that on 9/11. I was on the air for many hours. You're going to love this. Being a TV guy. I had a little 5-inch Sony black and white television that I kept in my office all the time for just such an occasion. I brought it into the studio with me, and I'm watching coverage on television, broadcast television, probably ABC. And I am describing to our listeners what I am seeing. First plane had already allegedly hit. Second plane, I'm on the air talking about what's going on. when it happened. And I had to, that's the first time talking about having to keep it together. I wanted to cry. I was so angry. The only way it could come out is just, I wanted to cry. I was so angry because I knew this is not an accident. Because at first that was the speculation. It was an accident. This is an errant plane. Something horrible has happened. Something went wrong. And then the Pennsylvania thing and the Pentagon thing and the second plane. And I'm describing it all while I'm watching it and having to keep it together. So oftentimes I had to pause just to fight back my own outrage, my own wanting to just yell out.
Yep.
I was so angry. And the 10 and a half hours I did that, describing what I'm watching, because the internet went down. You couldn't even get through. It was so inundated. It was television, broadcast television, that kept that show on the air. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate
Well, it's funny because, that, like I said, I was supposed to be in at 10:30 that morning. So I'm on my way into work, listening to Imus on the way in.
Don Imus.
And,
awesome.
They're talking about...
He went full conservative, man. That was awesome.
Well, he was the first one talking about the childhood vaccines they were giving the kids autism. So, but I'm on my way in. I'm listening to it, talking about the plane that hit the building. And then the second one hits. And I get to the George Washington Bridge, and they've closed it. So I make a U-turn on the Palisades. I head back north. I get to the Tappan Zee Bridge. I'm about 3/4 of the way across that. They closed the bridge. But then they figured...
They let you continue. I mean, they didn't stop traffic on the bridge.
They stopped traffic. And then they finally said, you know what, we can't keep people sitting here in the middle of the bridge. So they opened it up. I got across because I had my press credentials and the whole bit. I got almost to Manhattan. And a cop stopped me at the 230th Street Bridge and said, I can't let you through. But, you spend enough time in the field, you know your way around. I actually went a block over beyond the barricade, got in, crossed the bridge. And as I get into the city, the first thing I see as I stop for a light is a livery cab, one of the black cars, with a huge bumper sticker on the back, said, I love Islam. I said to myself, man, you need to get off the street now because you're not going to survive the day. I got into work at I think it was 10 to 11. And I go up, I see my boss, and I go, where do you need me? Well, your truck's not here. I said, I didn't ask you where my truck is. I said, where do you need me? Well, I need you right here in RF. Because when World Trade went down, we lost our transmitter. Right. There were a lot of towers on the Twin Towers. And we had our backup was also in World Trade. So literally at that point in time, we were broadcasting nobody except for cable. So our transmitter was down and 3 of our main receivers went down with World Trade. So he needed me there. So I was there from 10 to 11 until 3:30 in the morning. I went to the hotel, got a couple hours sleep. The next morning, walking back to the station, 6th Avenue was what we used to call a sure shot because you could look straight down 6th Avenue and see World Trade. So you could always hit it. You didn't even have to put the mast up. You could always get a signal in from there. And it wasn't until that point that what had happened hit me because I looked and all you saw was smoke. And that's when it finally hit me that this actually happened. But then you went on from there and it was just, I came in that Tuesday, I went home on Saturday. And it was, we lost our transmitter guy. So it was a rough deal. And there were a lot of things that went on. So there's many things in the media that happen that people don't really understand what actually happens, but they get so enthralled with the story and they get so enthralled with what these alleged reporters, what these alleged journalists are relating to them that they don't do a deep dive. Now I had that documentary that I told you about with the architects. One of the main reporters who was involved in it, who ended up in a bunch of different documentaries about 9/11, was fairly close with me. So I had retired and I had this documentary, and I contacted her and I said, listen, I'm sending this to you. I think you should watch it. Never heard from him, never watched it, never investigated it. Now, all this stuff is out there. It's plainly out there. What is the job of the journalist? Ascertain the facts, deliver them to the public. Have you heard any revisits to 9/11 other than the annual roll call?
No, as a matter of fact, I get my posts taken down on different social media every time I try and replay that video. They want to ignore it. They want to push it away and make it go away and stop asking.
Yep.
Stop asking.
They don't want to know.
Yeah.
They don't want the narrative out there, but it's not a narrative. It's a fact.
Thank God for Rumble, because YouTube has pulled off so much stuff of mine. Facebook deleted all my pages last summer, and Instagram, which is owned by Facebook, and they've done everything they can to deplatform me. Period.
I just got suspended
I'm just
by
a good old boy from Bakersfield, but I ask questions. I ask a lot of questions. I have no problems being the dumbest guy in the room and wanting clarification. I've built a career on that.
I just got suspended by X, and I can't get an answer as to why.
Oh, I got no answers either. But X, I'm surprised.
Yeah, I mean, my show is called Respect, and that's what it's based on. I do, like you, very little bad language, topics that are very broad-based, no misinformation, this and that and the other. I aired a show not 2 days ago, but the Monday prior, with a guy that I've had on before from the called the Freedom Law School, talking about how the IRS is flat out phony and taxing us is not legal, et cetera, et cetera.
Not constitutional.
No.
Income tax is not.
No. And all of a sudden, I'm suspended and I can't get a response.
That's troubling. That's really troubling. I thought that X was a safe platform.
So did
for
I.
us, for conservatives, I thought it was a safe platform. So again, go back to thank God for Rumble, because I've focused all my attention almost from the beginning on Rumble, even though the money sucks. I made $52 last year. I had tens of thousands of views. I made $52. The money's so bad, but this is my ministry. This is how I look at it, and the money will come. You love what you're doing, make people happy, and the money will naturally come to you.
Exactly.
Or inform people, and that's what I try and do. You're awesome. I'm up against the clock. I got to get to a guest standing by right now. I really hope you had a good time, because I want you on again sooner than later. Okay, because there's 1,000 things I want to talk to you about, especially a man of your experience with in major market media, your entire career, you lucky duck. How long did you work for WABC? I almost said
43 years.
43 years.
I was in the business for 46. I worked for them for 43. And
that's a great career.
It was a career, but as we discussed before, with the control of the big business, and especially at the end with Disney, for the last 2 years on my phone, I had a countdown app to my retirement, because I always felt that I have a good sense of humor, and I feel that that's got us through a lot of bad things, number one. And if the reporter was having
a bit of a morbid sense of humor, actually.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
My apologies. One of the terms you hear a lot is too soon.
Exactly.
Too soon.
So, I figured if the reporter had a good day, then I had a good day. Yeah. But it came to a point where it was actually work to try and enjoy yourself. And that's when I got the countdown clock.
What are you doing now? Where do we find you?
You could find me on, well, just for the remaining couple of weeks, if you go to Fake News 7 NY on Rumble, you'll
Fake
find
News 7. Is it Channel 7 in New York as well?
Absolutely.
Because ABC out here is also 7.
Yeah.
At least in San Francisco.
KGO and KTLA or KABC are all Channel 7. But
okay.
yeah, I went from having NYP, which is New York Press 3475, to having Fake News 7. It's on Rumble. On Rumble. It's on Telegram. It's on YouTube and Facebook. And my show is called Respect. I do it every Monday. And like I said, I'm retiring. My last show will be the April 27th. But I do have Patriots Across the Pond, passing the baton to them, because their interview style is very much like mine. And they'll be continuing the show. Oh,
man, I enjoyed talking with you so much. Thank you, my friend. Oh,
absolutely. It's been a wonderful
time. You need on your retirement desk? One of these mugs. Let's talk about politics and religion. That's what I do.
Absolutely.
You need one of those mugs. You can get them at CharLeeSimons.com, CharLeeSimons, CharLeeSimons.com, with a whole bunch of other stuff there too. But you're a blessing. Thank you, Mark Abrahams.
Thank you very much, Charlie. It's been a pleasure. It's been a lot of fun.
Good. I like to hear that. That's one of the two biggest compliments. In fact, I'll bring you back in for this. The biggest compliment you can never give me, and I've received it. It's from a listener or a viewer who says, I was going through a really horrible time, and listening to you got me through it, because you'd make me laugh. You'd make me think. I always had a good time, and I'd forget my troubles for a while. Greatest compliment you can ever give me. And I value my time with listeners and now with viewers. Having to make the transition from radio to television has been tough, because I'm not the best looking guy in the world. But now I have to actually be concerned with haircuts and so on and so forth. Dang it, I hate that. I don't wear makeup, though. That's where I draw the line. I'm not going to wear that TV makeup. All right, buddy. Talk to you later. Thank you so much for your time. Share this show. If you had a good time, we went on a long time. I had a feeling we would. And share these shows, because again, I don't have Facebook or Instagram anymore to let people know when I have new shows out. So, and like this, if you don't mind, hit that like button. That helps with the algorithms. Comment down below. That also does too. But you got to do 5 words, or more than 5 words. 5 words or less, they count everything as a bot. That's how it is. And that's how it is now. I know it's weird, but it's true. So hi, Charlie isn't going to cut it. They'll just say you're a bot. I don't get credit with the algorithm thing. I didn't invent the system. I'm just learning that that's how it's working. So follow this channel on rumble.com/do-not-talk, or wherever you're watching. Follow this channel or subscribe on YouTube, and share them. May God bless you and keep you. May God bless America. But most importantly, America, bless God.